kids. Welcome back to Sophie's Creative World. Here I have my friend here, Harry. Say hi. Hello, boys and girls. How are you doing? Tonight, we will be reading a story, and we will be relaxing tonight with some relaxing music, as you know. Now, let's get started with telling the all well-known story in my own words and kind of mixing it up a bit for myself. So, boys and girls, say goodbye to Harry. He'll be back soon. Bye, boys and girls. Bye. All right. So the story tonight I'm going to be telling is about a young girl named Cinderella, a beautiful girl. She was born into a wonderful family of a mother and father, and she lived in a nice mansion house, nice, pretty cottage mansion house. And her mother, she loved her mother. And she would go to the meadow with her mother as a young girl, the age of 5 years old. And her mother would say, "Do you believe in fairies, Cinderella, she called. Cinderella said, "Well, do you, mother?" And she said, "Yes, I believe there is someone out there, your fairy godmother. And you must believe in her. She will help you sometime in life." And Cinderella said, "I didn't know that." And Cinderella, she always thought she was talking to the animals at the house where she lived. There was a barn near there, and there was geese, there was sheep, all types of animals, and mice, and she just had a wonderful heart for them. And her father, of course, he would go on long errands, on long trips in the carriage, and come back and bring Cinderella the beautiful gifts of all. And Cinderella loved her dad and her father of homecomings. So Cinderella grew to be 12 years old. Cinderella's mother, one day they were in the field, and Cinderella's mother fell faint onto the field and fell, and she was ill. Cinderella rushed to her father. "Father, father, something's wrong with mother. Mother." And he says, "What's wrong? What's wrong, Cinderella? What's wrong, honey?" So he runs out there and sees her mother on the grass, picks her up, takes her to her mother's bedside. Her mother lays there faint. The doctor comes. He tells them, "I don't know what's wrong with her, but she must not have long." That night, they sit beside her bedside, Cinderella crying on her mother's chest, and her mother calls, "Cinderella, come here, sweet darling child." Cinderella comes, and she says, "Don't forget, Cinderella. Have courage, have faith that you will be the strongest you've ever been, and that don't worry. Someday you will be helped. You'll do more in this world." And Cinderella, that's the last words her mother said. The next morning, her mother had passed that last night. Cinderella and her father had long weeks sitting sadly in the parlor room where she read stories to her father endlessly. Her father said to Cinderella one day, "I love your stories, Cinderella. I'm getting older, and I'm going to need to find another woman in our life, someone that I can marry. That will be your stepmother." And Cinderella was like, "Whatever makes you happy, father." In a week's time, he sent out a letter to the fairest lady, and she came that very day in her carriage, so beautiful, wearing the beautifulest dress, with her 2 daughters, Drusilla and Anastasia. They were the beautifulest daughters ever. And they had a cat as well that came with them. When the carriage arrived, Cinderella was waiting by the doorstep, and her father was waiting. The old mistress lady, beautiful dress, came out. And she came out and said, "Oh, what a wonderful place to live in. How gorgeous it seems." And Cinderella's father said, "We're glad to have you. Now why don't you come in, and I'll help you with your bags." Then her daughters came tumbling out of the car, with the cat running out of the car. Anastasia and Josuela, they came out. Anastasia said, "Watch out! Ouch! Ouch! You're tripping over my toes, Josuela." And so, Josuela, she said, "I'm not doing anything. No, I'm going to go in and see this beautiful house. I love being here." Anastasia said, "Well, that's fine." So they huff and puff out of the carriage. Then their mother, which was going to be Cinderella's stepmother, came walking in, and she said, "I didn't know you had such a beautiful daughter." "She takes after her mother," said Cinderella's father. Then Cinderella said, "Hi, hello, my name's Cinderella. Nice to meet you." And then her soon-to-be stepmother, two daughters, said, "Oh, what a gorgeous house you have, Cinderella. Care to show us around?" And Cinderella said, "Sure, sure, sure." So she showed them around the house. Cinderella, she was happy to show them around the house. And so her father helped carry their bags in. And she showed them around the house for hours. The next night, Cinderella's stepmother wanted to have a big party to welcome everyone in. So she did. There were so many people there. There were so many guests, so many people from the town, from the kingdom, and they came from all over to come see her. It was a big party. So that night, Cinderella, she was laughing and having fun. And her stepmother was having fun. "Oh, don't tell me. I cannot believe everyone is here. I mean, because I'm here." And then Cinderella's stepsister said, "Oh, this is so cool. We get to live in this fancy house and have parties all day and night." And Cinderella didn't see her father. And she's like, "Where is he?" She goes into his studying room, and she says, "Father, why aren't you out there?" And he says, "It's too loud for me out there." "Anyways, why would I need to be out there? It's not really my party, it's your stepmother's party." And she said, "Well, it's a lot of fun out there. I hope you could come join us." And she said, "Well, there's something I want to talk to you about, Cinderella." And Cinderella says, "What's that, Father?" And he says, "I'm sorry, but in 2 days' time, I'll be leaving on another journey. But I'll be back. Don't you worry. And I'll bring you the finest gift, the finest flowers I can find you. The bouquet of flowers." And Cinderella said, "But Father, you've already left too much. You can't leave me here in this household with them." And he said, "You'll have a fine time get to knowing your stepmother and stepsisters." So she said, "Okay." So after the party was done in 2 days' time, Cinderella's father had to go. He went in the carriage, and Cinderella went over and said, "Bye, Father," and blew him a kiss. "See you in a week's time." And her father says, "Don't worry, Cinderella, everything will be okay." She said, "Bye, bye, Father." And her stepsister said, "Bye, bring us back something nice, a nice dress or something." And he says, "I won't forget, I will." And then Cinderella's stepmother says, "Bye, we'll take care of the house, don't you worry." So Cinderella goes back in. She starts to cry. "I can't believe my father's gone." And then her stepmother says, "Come here, dear child, Cinderella. Everything will be okay." And takes her and hugs her. Then, then after that, Cinderella's stepmom says, "Well, we haven't really had assigned rooms, but do you know any good spots we could be sleeping?" And she said, well, your daughters could take my room and you could take the big master." And she said, then Cinderella's stepmother says, "That would be great. I would love that. Now why don't you go show my daughters the room they'll be staying in?" So she does. Then they put their stuff in there. So they say, "What a beautiful room. It's a shame you won't be sleeping in here." And Cinderella says, "Huh? Well, I could sleep down here." And Cinderella's stepmother walks in and says, "No need to. The attic is great. It has a little bed in there. It'll be great. You can move all your stuff up there. And you'll fit in." And Cinderella says, in her head, she's like, "Well, I don't really want to be in the attic." She takes all her stuff up there to the attic. That evening, Cinderella, her stepmother, it's time for dinner. And then her stepmother says, "Now, who does the dinner around here? I can't quite remember." And then Cinderella's stepsisters say, "I don't know. We should ask Cinderella. Maybe she can make it for us." And then Cinderella's stepmother says, "What a great idea, girls. She'll do great. What a great idea, girls." So then Cinderella's stepmother says, then she says, "Cinderella, why don't you go and cook us some dinner? That would be great. You shall cook us dinner tonight. Now get on it." Cinderella does not think she should be cooking the dinner. She goes in there and she feels sad her father's gone, but she cooks the dinner. She comes back out. She has a plate for herself. Then her stepmother says, "Well, who's this fourth plate for?" And Cinderella says, "It's for me, so I can sit down and join you." And Cinderella's stepsisters say, "Join us? Well, no way you're joining us." And then Cinderella's stepmother says, "Well, I'm sorry, there's not enough room here. You have to get tending to the dishes, Cinderella." And then her stepsisters say, "Yes, what a fine idea. You can be like our little servant maid." As they chuckle. Cinderella feels sad. She goes in and does the dishes. And she says, "Why do I have to do all this work? This is my home." Then she starts to cry and cracks a dish. And she's so sad. She finishes the dishes and goes to bed. The next day, what happens is she goes downstairs. And Cinderella, she's still feeling sad. And her stepsisters are in their room waking up. "Oh, ah." And Anastasia, she wakes up and says, "Drusilla," she says, "Oh, who will wash our clothes? We shall call Cinderella." "Cinderella!" Anastasia calls. And Cinderella comes to the door. "Yes, you called me, Anastasia?" Then Drusilla says, "Come wash our clothes. Take our clothes. Please, we need these clothes. Take them. Take them now." And Cinderella says, "Well, I take them now," says Anastasia. "No dilly-dallying. We want our clothes washed. We want to look the finest." And Cinderella says, "Okay." Then she passes her stepmother, and her stepmother says, "Cinderella, why haven't you got breakfast on?" And Cinderella says, "Well, I'm getting to these clothes." And then Cinderella's stepmother says, but no buts. I want to see breakfast on the table immediately." Then Cinderella, she all of a sudden feels sad. She has so many jobs to do that day. When she finally gets a break, she gets on her horse, rides her horse all the way down to the forest. She's so sad. Then she hears another whinnying. And she says, "Stop, Portia." That's her horse's name. And a gallant man on a black horse comes riding in with all of his men. And he comes riding in and he sees her. He says, "Hello, miss. What are you doing out here?" And she says, "I'm sorry, but..." And he says, "What's your name by chance?" And she says, "Well, I'm not quite sure. I need to go back. I need to go back to my house." So she gallops back. He never figures her name. He says, what a gorgeous girl. And so he decides that he wants to have a ball. So he goes to ask his father. He gallops back. He goes into his father's place where he studies. And he says, Father, I just met this really gorgeous girl out in the woods. I would love to have a ball. All girls of all ages. So I can find her. And his father says, well, what a great idea. And his name was Prince Philip. And he was the prince of the kingdom. So he asked his guards to send out a paper to everyone, send out to his guards, that there shall be a royal ball held at the royal palace. So Cinderella, she's back at home. And so the next day, Cinderella is in the village getting produce, getting all kinds of things to cook the meals at the home. And her stepmother and stepsisters, they are in the village too, and they're at the market with her. And Cinderella sees a guard. He comes up with a scroll and he says, hear ye, all girls of all ages, there shall be a royal ball held at the royal palace, and Prince Philip will find his true love. Cinderella beamed. She was so excited. Then her stepsister said, oh mother, we have to go. I'm gonna be the prince, I'm gonna be the princess, said Anastasia. And Drusilla, she said, no, I'm going to be the princess. I will. And then Cinderella's stepmother says, don't worry, daughters. You will both go. You look stunning. I shall call the seamstress this instant, and she will get us the finest dresses. Then they go home, and Cinderella says, I would like to attend the ball. And Cinderella's stepmother says, what? And then Cinderella says, never mind. So they get the seamstress ready. In 3 days' time, the ball is. Cinderella finds her mother's old dress that she kept. She stitches it up and sews it nicely. She sees her little mouse friend on the floor, and she says, oh, how cute, Gus. Are you hungry for a little bit of cheese? And the mouse goes, squeak, 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 squeak. And she says, oh, I'll feed you in a moment. She says, oh, but I cannot let Pussycat come here. No, I have to keep the cat away from you, won't I? And the cat's name is Guinevere. And she says, Guinevere, get out of here, or you scare the mice away. Finally, she gets her dress on, comes down the attic stairway, while her stepmother and stepsisters are dressed beautifully. Cinderella comes down, and her stepmother says, what do you think you're wearing? She says. And Cinderella says, I was hoping I could go to the ball tonight. And Cinderella's stepsisters laugh. Oh, you going to the ball? I've never seen a maid at the ball. And then Cinderella's stepmother said, there's no room for maids at the ball. You will not be going. Right, daughters. She goes up and sees this dress. Oh, how ugly is this dress, and rips it. And Cinderella says, no, this is my mother's, no. And then Cinderella's stepmother says, you shall not be going to the ball. You understand? Finally, they leave to the ball. Cinderella is so sad. And do you know what she does? She runs all the way out the door. And she runs all the way back to her house where there's a stone. And there's a stone statue of a beautiful lady. And there's a little well there to get some water. And she cries and sits on the bench, crying. And she's just crying. And suddenly she hears a movement. She hears a voice. Are you okay, dearie? And she says, huh? Who's there? He says, it's me. Don't you remember me? Many years ago, your mother sang, talking about me. She says, no, who are you? I'm your fairy godmother. I mean, godmother. And Cinderella says, what? my fairy godmother, I didn't know I had that. And she says, well, you didn't hear your mother talking in the garden with you about this? And Cinderella says, I don't know. And she says, my mouth is a little dry, so you might have a cup of water, so. And then Cinderella says, well, yes, sure I do. Here. So she pours a glass of water, a little cup of water. And the fairy godmother takes a sip. And she says, oh, that's better. Now let me do some magic. Let me get in something more comfortable. And she whips her wand. She changes into the most gorgeous lady. Big poofy white dress. Changes into that. And Cinderella says, whoa, you're gorgeous. And then her fairy godmother says, what's wrong? And she says, I can't go to the ball. My stepmother and my stepsisters are so mean. She says, well, that won't be a problem. I'll help you with that. We just need to find a carriage. And she says, do you might have a pumpkin nearby? And Cinderella says, yes, in our garden we do. So they go over to the garden, and then the fairy godmother says, bippity-boppity-boo! Pumpkin turned into a carriage. And the pumpkin starts to grow into this beautiful brass color, this beautiful gold color, into a carriage. She says, what should we do about the coachman? And she says, oh, lizards. And she says, I know exactly. She goes, bippity-boppity-boo, lizards, I want you to be a coachman. So the lizards pop up and say, whoa, we're losing our tails. We're doing this. Well, hello, my lady, they say. Then she says, we need someone to drive this thing. And she says, oh, a goose, that'll do. She says, goose, 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 turn into a coachman to drive. So he pops up and he says, whack, and he says, oh, my beak's going away. Oh, so then she says, what will we do about the horse? Cinderella says, well, there's mice. And then Cinderella's fairy godmother says, aha, great. She says, bippity-boppity-boo, mice, mice. You'll be nice to be the nicest, finest horses. So they grow and grow into these big horses that are with the carriage. Then she says, are you ready to go? And Cinderella says, I can't go looking like this. My fairy godmother will notice me. And she says, don't you worry, darling. And she says, I'll just spruce it up. And she says, bippity-boppity-boo. And then Cinderella, her dress is this big, poofy, and it is blue, and it's huge, this big poofy dress it is. And you know what? Cinderella, she is just the happiest. She says, what'll I do with my shoes? And then Cinderella's fairy godmother, she says, I can fix those. And she goes, wing, zing, bippity-boppity-boo. And then Cinderella's shoes, they turn into glass slippers, the most beautiful you ever seen. She says, well, go off, dearie. Go off to the ball. You'll do great. So Cinderella goes in the carriage and says, well, bye now. But then the fairy godmother says, wait, don't forget. When the clock ticks 12 o'clock, you must come home quickly before you transform back into your old raggedy self again. Now, don't forget that. Don't forget. And Cinderella says, I won't. They clippity-clop away down to the palace, down the road, until they finally get there. The coachman opens the door for her and says, there you go, my lady. Now enjoy your time. She goes in, and she opens the door and sees guards there, and she goes in, and then she sees all the people there. She's like, that's beautiful. And all the people are saying, who's that lady? Who's that girl? Who is she? She's so pretty. And the prince is there, and he says, Father, I don't see the girl. Is she coming or not? And then his father says, why don't you marry the gazino girl? And then Prince Philip says, I don't want to marry her. I want to find that girl I saw. Then he finally sees her coming in the door. Cinderella comes down, and he comes down, and he says, well, you look stunning. And then Cinderella says, you too. And so he says, care to dance? So they dance down the ballroom. Dance. They dance for hours. And her stepmother and stepsister see her, and they say, "Who's that girl?" And her step mother says, "Who is that girl? She looks so familiar, but I can't tell. He loves her." And then Cinderella's stepsisters say, "We have to dance with him, Mother. We have to dance." And then her stepmother says, "Go out there, girls." So they try to go out there, but Cinderella and Prince Philip, they get away, and he takes her to his painting room where they painted portraits of him. And she says, "These are lovely." He says, "Yes. Let me take you to a special spot." So they go into this garden where there's a swing. She hops up on the swing, Cinderella, and then the Prince Philip, he pushes her on the swing, and Cinderella goes, "Oh, this is so fun, wee!" Then she hears the sound of a clock, dong, dong. Then she sees it. "Oh no, I have to go. And he says, then the Prince Philip says, "What, now? Not now." And he says, "Wait, come back here." And so Cinderella runs, and he says, "Well, I haven't gotten your name yet." She runs out of the palace, down the stairs, trips her glass slipper. It's on one of the stairs, and she has one glass slipper, and she runs to her carriage. And the prince runs after her, behind her, and says, "Wait, you forgot your..." It's too late. She gets in the carriage and storms off. She storms back off. And do you know what happens after that? The prince picks up the slipper and says, "I'll find you, don't worry. I have this slipper." So Cinderella goes out, and she is in the carriage now. They're zipping home, and she's almost there until she starts to feel the pumpkin transform, and all of the animals transform. She hurries, she runs back into her house, opens the door. She sees she has a glass slipper. She has to hide it. So she puts it in the ashes of the fire. And then she looks like she's cleaning the ashes. She hears another carriage pull in. Her stepmother and stepsisters are coming. They open the door, and the stepsister said, "Well, it was a beautiful time, but the prince, he was dancing with someone more beautiful. She was wearing a gorgeous blue dress." And the stepmother says, "Don't worry, we'll get him. We'll get him sometime." And then she says, "Cinderella, where are you?" And Cinderella looks, and she says, "What's all over your face?" "Oh, sorry, stepmother, I was just cleaning the fireplace." And then her stepsister says, "Oh, that's awful. I thought of a new name for you. Cinder. We should call you Cinder, because you have got cinders all over your face." And they start to laugh. Then Cinderella's stepmother says, "Clean yourself up and go up to your room." So she does. In 2 days' time, there is another announcement by the king's guards that the king's guards and all the mates, they will be going around the whole kingdom to see if the shoe fits, and whoever it fits will be the prince's wife. So they go all around the kingdom. They haven't got to Cinderella's house yet, but they will get there soon. So in the meantime, Cinderella goes to her room to look for the glass slipper. She looks down in the place where she hid it. It's not there. She stands up, and her stepmother's in the room and says, "Looking for this? Where did this come from?" She says, well, it was mine, and, well, it's not yours anymore." Then Cinderella says, "It's hard to explain." She says, "Not anymore." And she says, "Huh?" And then Cinderella's stepmother goes out of the room and says, "You won't be needing this anymore. You won't be doing anything." Shuts the door and locks her in there. And Cinderella says, "No!" She starts to cry. She's really sad. So the king's men, they travel far and wide. They get to Cinderella's, to her house. They knock on the door. And Cinderella's stepmother and stepsisters are so excited. Her stepsisters say, "Oh, mother, they're here, it has to fit." They open the door. And then Cinderella's stepmother says, "Why don't you come in for a cup of tea?" And they said, "We're not here for long, but we're here to try it on your daughters. Is there any other maidens in this house?" And she says, no, it's just me and my daughters. They sit down, and Cinderella's stepsisters sit down. And they try on the slipper, and they go, it will fit. But then it doesn't fit. And the man, the royal guard, he says, I don't think this fits. Meanwhile, Cinderella's up there singing, lavender's blue, dilly dilly, lavender's blue, lavender's blue, dilly, I love you. Her mouse friends, they want to help her out, so they get on each other. And there's a window up there in the attic. They open the window up, and she starts to sing. And one particular guard outside hears it and says, what is that? He walks in, takes his helmet off, and he says, are you sure there's no more mistresses in here? And then her stepmother, she bows and says, oh, my royal prince, my royal prince. And she says, guard, Duke, I would like you to check it out further. She says, there's no one else. So he goes up and checks. She opens the door, and she says, see, it's no one, just a peasant. So she opens the door, and there's Cinderella. And he says, now, darling, he says, now, why won't you come with me, ma'am, down there? So she does. She goes down there and sits down. She sees the prince. She can't believe it. And the prince says, it's you. She says, it's you. Then he tries on her foot, and it's a perfect match. She's so excited. So is the prince. And her stepmother is mad, and stepsisters. They say, we're so sorry for being so mean to you, Cinderella. We never will again. And so then the prince says, shall we go off? She says, not yet. I have something to say. Her stepmother is on the stairs. And she says, stepmother, I forgive you. I forgive you. And Cinderella goes off with the prince. Well, meanwhile, Cinderella, she has not seen her dad in ages because her dad had passed away during the time she was with her stepmother. And that has to be told in a further story. Now, Cinderella will live her happy life ever after. Now, I hope you enjoyed the story. And I hope you learned to be kind and to not make people do things. Bye. We will do another thing tonight. We will be doing some relaxing things and exercises. Now, here's my friend Harry again. Hello, guys. Hello, kids. I hope you love the story. I know it was really long, but now let's do some exercises, okay? So I got my friend here, Harry. He's gonna help me with one thing. You guys get comfortable in your beds, and okay, we're gonna start with 2 deep breaths. 2 deep breaths. So Harry, you show them. In through your nose. Alright, boys and girls. Goodbye for now. Now you will hear more from Sophie. Alright, guys. I want you to get in a relaxable place, a spot that you will enjoy. And I would like you to just not think about too many thoughts, because I know there are kids and children out there and anyone who have really intense thoughts, really scared, worried, and you do not need to feel that, because Heavenly Father, God is with you. If you believe that, He'll be there with you. So I want you to find a stuffed animal to hug. It can be any stuffed animal that you can find. And I just want you to hold it really close to your heart. And just feel the warmth for a minute. So after you've done that for a few minutes now, I'm going to do a little relaxing thing. So now, I want you to think that you are in a meadow full of flowers or anything. You're going to close your eyes. Just imagine it. Relax your body. Wherever you're at, just lay down. And I want you can think that there could be any types of flowers you want. Roses, violets. Maybe there's butterflies or bees in the meadow, or a house in the distance, or maybe a barn, or maybe a cow in the distance, or some goats or sheep. Or maybe there is an airplane in the sky, or it's going to be nighttime in the meadow. Just relax, and we're going to take a couple deep breaths. I like to call them dragon breaths. It's like you're blowing out fire. And we'll do a couple of those breaths, and I'll teach you how to do another one. So let's go in, and now. In, and out. Now try to do it slowly. It will help you relax better. All right, now let's try another kind of deep breath. It's called the flower. So I want you to imagine you're picking some flowers from the field, any flowers. I'm going to say mine is a rose. So I'm going to pick my rose and I'm going to smell it. I'm going to blow out the petals. I'm going to smell it. Blow out the petals. One more time. Very good, boys and girls. Now just relax, close your eyes, just relax your muscles. I just want you to, just lay down, relax, like I'm doing here in this chair. Now, I want you to think of something that is your favorite thing, or it can be something that's going to happen in your week that you're very excited about. It may be a fun show you've watched, or a fun character, or a fun toy you like, or a trip you're going to go on, and I just want you to close your eyes and imagine a scene. Now I'm going to close my eyes, and I'm going to imagine that I am baking one of my favorite treats. That I am baking chocolate chip cookies in my kitchen, and the warmth and the smell of the cookies. I'm just going to imagine, take a couple deep breaths. Now, you should not think about anything too intense. You should be relaxed, and you should just know that all is well, and you should put aside all the thoughts, and you can try to have some good thoughts, and you will have good dreams tonight. Each and every one of you, you're special, and you are just so loved. And even though you don't think so, you are. Even all the kids out there that are different, disabled, disabilities, you're so loved, you're special. That doesn't mean a difference for the world. Just because you can't do something someone else can do doesn't mean you're different. And know that it's in your heart. And I want tonight to be a peaceful night for you to be able to rest, to just deep breathe and to set aside your thoughts. And it has always been hard for me to go to sleep. I have major anxiety at night and worries. And I feel that for anyone who is like that. So I hope all of you have peaceful sleep and a good night. Bye, and see you to the next video.